Good morning. My name is Emily Weiss, and I only have one computer, so I'm going to record and do my presentation on the same computer, so you won't be able to see it, but you can hear all the videos and it'll be there. So, good morning. My name is Emily. I am a senior at Seaholm High School, and I am a member of the FLEX program. For my book board this year, I did the effects divorce places on children, like immediately and then in the future, and things along that line. To begin, I just want to show you guys a short clip that kind of ties up all my ideas together.
Dear Mom and Dad, I know that you are hurting. I'm hurting too. I feel and feed off your tension, fear, and shock. Although I am young and cannot express verbally what is happening in our lives, I am still feeling the impact. My heart is broken every time I have to give up a parent. My sense of security is lost. Please don't assume that I am resilient. Please don't assume that my life will be exactly as it was, and that I will continue to feel the same love from both of you. I am a human being just like you. My needs are just like yours. I need love, attention, nurturing, stability, consistency, affection, understanding, patience, and mostly to be wanted. When you fight over me or put me in the middle of your argument, you are sending me the message that winning with each other is more important than my life. I am learning from you that it is better to be right than to be loved. You are teaching me that I came from a person who is unlovable and wrong, and that I am somehow wrong too. When you confide your hurt in my heart, you are storing up adult pain and robbing me of my childhood. You are taking away my belief that love is unconditional and replacing it with a message that tells me to become hard and not to love because I will get hurt and not be able to recover. You may not understand this today, and I am so small that you are not thinking about my future, but you are putting me at a greater risk of getting a divorce myself. At times, you are risking my safety to fill a void in your heart. My safety is your job. Without you and your protection, I am unshielded from the world. This will manifest in irrational fears for me, because I will stay in a state of fight or flight for most of my life. Someday, this initial shock will wear off, but how you choose to parent me through this crisis will never wear off. I will either feel your sense of selflessness, support, protection, or I will have a scar on my heart with a message that reads, "Good things happen to good people. I must be bad." Thoughtfully, the child of divorce.
So that was a very emotional video, and I just kind of wanted to let you guys know ahead of time that I personally chose this topic not because I am a child of divorce myself, but because I feel that the numbers of divorces in America specifically are increasing, and that almost makes society feel as if they don't have such an effect on people. But I just want to inform that the effects that divorce do place on children specifically are much more drastic than we usually imagine them. And then this is where like the focus, my focus point for this whole presentation is that although a good number of people in society are deluded in thinking that divorce only places short-term effects on children, the impact that it leaves is much more long-term for various reasons. And this is going to be like my main idea throughout the whole presentation. So our roadmap, what we're going to start out with today, we're going to first focus on what changes a child's reaction to divorce. Then we'll go through the immediate effects, how it impacts the relationship, how it changes their future, the opposing argument to this side, and then kind of my service learning project. Okay, so to start with child's reactions, these are all inevitable ones. There's nothing that a parent can do to try and change this. It's just basically things that impact the way a child will react. And the three main ones that I found when researching are age, gender, and mental disorders. Age specifically because younger children, if the parents were to get a divorce when the children are younger, they have a much more difficult time dealing with it because they don't fully understand what's going on, and so they have a much more difficult time trying to deal with it, and this leads to like anger more often and a lot of confusion. Where older kids understand it more, kind of, so they accept it, but they also um, know what is coming for them, so they have a harder time, and they tend to be more reflective in this situation. Along with that, gender, placing all stereotypes aside, boys tend to react out more and like become aggressive and frustrated and angry, and they'll act out, and you can see those emotions displayed that way, while girls often tend to keep within themselves, and they'll like treat these issues that they might be having during it internally, and this can lead to more mental disorders such as depression and anxiety specifically. And lastly, mental disorders are going to change the way a child reacts to it, because, oh, this has nothing to do with it. About 80% of teens in psychiatric hospitals and 60% of children in psychiatric clinics are products of divorce, so this clearly changes the way a child is going to react, whether they have depression or anxiety or ADHD or any of these things. They might be having it, but then this divorce can like spark it or like bring interest, like create a bigger and a more noticeable issue than before. Okay, so next, the immediate effects to begin with the graph on our right. The most immediate effect that we see is that the average annual income for children in America or in Michigan is $43,600, and immediately after divorce, that goes to $25,300, and so that just already almost takes every annual salary and cuts it in half. And so that's a huge impact that families might not necessarily realize when going through the process of divorce. More specifically to children, though, the oldest child often has to act as the lost parent role between the houses, or even if the father leaves and it's just the mother, or the mother leaves and it's just the father, the oldest child often has to act as that lost parent. And this can be way too emotionally and physically hard for the child to handle. They aren't developmentally ready for it, and so this can lead to many feelings of inadequacy because they'll never live up to the expectations that the parents might have subconsciously placed on them to take care of their children, to take care of the parent, to take care of whatever needs to be done. Along with that, another immediate effect is the diminishing relationships. Parenting time automatically decreases. You won't see your one or both of the parents as much as you would if they were together, and so that can affect the relationship that had previously been established. Along with that, coping is an immediate effect that everyone needs to deal with, and everyone deals with it differently. However, younger children often cope by acting out, where older children have a period of reflection, and that's their coping time, and it just kind of has to deal with maturity and age, and how much they can understand about the divorce. There are a few things parents can try to do to minimize these effects. The two things are communication and how much of the conflict that they expose to their children. For communication, just allowing the child to know that what they feel and what they have to say is valid, and like there's an open communication between the parent and the child, or if the child doesn't want to speak to the parent, then to offer another outlet for the child to talk to is extremely important, and it can minimize some of those immediate effects that children will feel, and that extra stress and those extra pressures and such as that. Along with that, the amount of conflict that parents show to their children can also erase that, because parents might not understand how the kid's feeling, and they might be extremely stressed out, or they might be extremely sad, or however they're feeling, and these added conflicts between their parents will just enhance those effects, and it won't minimize them at all. And then there's psychological issues that go way back further in the mind, and they can't really be minimized or changed to by the parents. And these are being overweight or obese and being sick. And to start with overweight or obese, there was a study that if a child of divorce is 57% more likely to be overweight or obese than a child in an intact marriage or in any other type of family situation. And this might have to do with the financial issues, it might have to do with the stress levels, but whatever it does, that is a huge increase that occurs just by their parents being separated. And along with that, sickness. Children of divorce get sick much more frequently, and they can stay sicker for much longer than they normally would have. And this also makes a huge difference due to the lowered immune system because of the high stress levels or whatever the case may be. But those are issues that usually cannot be fixed through conversation and communication. And those are just some of the immediate effects that children and families who are going through a divorce might have to deal with or understand. Next is relationships. Just to look at the graph on the right, 90% of homeless and runaway youth, 71% of high school dropouts, and 63% of youth suicides all are children growing up without fathers. And so this just shows one of the things that fathers are a huge, huge importance in a child's childhood. And this is often taken away when their parents get divorced because in too many cases the dad just gets up and leaves and doesn't spend much time with the children anymore, and this can impact them so much, and it can also impact their relationship a lot. So even if the father does stay there, parents, their relationships can easily be diminished because of, as I said earlier, the loss of parenting time or the abandonment, or even just the way a child feels toward that parent might be negative because of the divorce. They might blame one, things such as that. Along with that, trust issues, just speaking relationships in general, friendships, like parents, family, things of that nature. Children of divorce will be much less likely to trust someone because they do see what can happen when you put so much trust into a relationship, and they only have that negative idea of a relationship, so they're much less likely to open up and trust and be vulnerable, kind of, because they don't want to be shut down, kind of. And along with that, friendships, whether they're new or they're ones that have been previously established, they can be called into question and wondered if this friendship is worth it, or if I'm exposing too much of myself to my friends to the point that they can take that and use that as harm against me. So relationships in general tend to become diminished and not as good, or I'm thinking of the word right now, but they can be not as developed as they would have been in an intact marriage. And then the future, and this is like the part that not many people take into consideration when thinking of children of divorce. To begin with, that low economic status, as we saw in the chart earlier, about almost $20,000 decrease between before marriage and after marriage for the annual income for a family in Michigan. This can even put people in poverty, and if that does so, the poverty cycle is one that's very hard to get out of, and this can actually keep children in poverty. So it can keep them in that low economic status with not much that they can do to get out of it. Along with that, children of divorce look at marriage much differently than children from an intact marriage. They don't have those butterfly feelings. They often feel anxious, nervous, and sometimes they don't even want to get married because they saw exactly what happened to a marriage. And even if they do have that choice of getting married, they have a much higher chance of getting a divorce themselves. And just depending on the child, they can either decide that that's not worth it, or they can decide they don't want to put their kids through it, or they don't want to go through that themselves, or they aren't going to do what their parents did, and all those overwhelming feelings can just result in them saying, I'm just not going to get married in general. Less specifically, kind of in the future, they have to deal with the stress in academics. Their stress levels are shown to be much higher than children of intact families, and whether that's because they get stressed out about things more easily and they don't adapt well to change, or they just are more high strung. And academically, they're shown that their academic standard is actually lower than the average child, and that might be bouncing back between the two houses, or having to take care of the younger kids while the mom or dad is at work, or whatever it is. All those circumstances lead to an average lower academic level than everyone else. And then lastly, forgiving, which might not seem like a big idea, but kids often do not forgive their parents for the divorce, which is not a very common thing that we hear about. They'll move on, and they'll move on with their life, and of course they'll love their parents, but they won't forgive them. There was a study done from Stanford students who actually defied all those other statistics of lower academics and higher stress levels and not succeeding as well, and they succeeded, and they defied those statistics. And they did this psychologist did a study, and she asked them, do you forgive your parents? And every single one of them said that they do not forgive their parents for what they did. And they checked up 5 years later, and they said the same thing. They still have not forgiven their parents. So the healing with time doesn't exactly make sense in this situation. And lastly, big events, whether it's graduations, weddings, even something as big but little as this big board presentation. They're supposed to be excited and happy. Those events, those can often be stressful and nerve-wracking almost, because both parents have to be put together in the same room, and instead of wondering how beautiful the bride's going to look, they wonder, will they behave? Are they going to be able to not embarrass the child? And here's a short video clip from the new movie ACOD, Adult Children of Divorce. Just a short video clip that kind of goes along with that idea.
Already, and I've kind of forged this fragile peace between them.
A fragile peace?
They always made a mess of everything, like all holidays and graduations and funerals.
I remember the funeral incident, and I maintain that funerals need to be about the person who died.
Right. And, I got smart, and over the years, I started coming up with ways to avoid situations like this. Thanksgiving, who am I going to spend Thanksgiving with? Well, they think I'm in Honduras building schools with the U.S. CARES program, but little did they know the U.S. CARES program doesn't exist, so...
Oh, it sounds real.
Yeah, I got it figured out, but I don't know, this wedding, it's risky. I guess I'm just looking for some advice. I don't know, someone to talk to super quick to figure out, how to survive the next few months.
Okay, so that just kind of has to deal with the whole big idea event. Instead of being like, oh my god, I'm getting married, they're nervous about it, they don't know what to do, they don't know, do they have 2 weddings, 2 different receptions, and it's just ideas like that can stress children of divorce out in the future. And so then we'll also focus on the opposing argument, and during my research, I found 3 main ideas that had to deal with the opposing argument, and that was that there ends up being normality with time, and that not much has changed once the child can adapt to it. The divorce can lead to better things for the children, and lastly, it's much better than the kids being around this constant fighting. So to tackle the normality with time, I just kind of think throughout my whole presentation, I've showed that there really isn't normality with time. Nothing will go back to normal. They will be able to adapt to it usually and understand their circumstance and move forward with it, but they won't go back to normal as if their parents were never divorced. Then for the can leads to better things argument, I couldn't find much information to back that argument up, actually. The only one I would think of is unless it was an abusive relationship, which actually is not very common among divorced parents. And then lastly, better than the fighting. And this is a huge argument that a lot of people make, is that getting a divorce is better than the fighting for the kids because they aren't exposed to it. But in more cases than one would think, they forget about the court that follows immediately after, and the custody battles and the value battles and all these issues. And actually, with kids being involved, as the cases that I'm focusing on are, the parents aren't going to never see each other again. They'll actually be around each other often because they have the same children. And so this actually almost enhances the fighting because there's more issues to fight about because of the custody battles and the child support and this and that and every little thing that they want to argue about. So better than the fighting, it actually isn't, because the fighting is still there. And so I just kind of wanted to finish it up before I get into my service learning project with a happy note, because this is all really sad, and not all of this is doom. Like, no one who gets a divorce dooms their children for their life. Like, there will be difficulties that they'll have to move forward with, but they won't be doomed. And I'm a child of divorce, and I still plan on getting married. I still plan on having a successful life. I still plan on having children. Like, I am not completely destroyed by my parents' decision to have a divorce, and a lot of other families have that same feeling. So take all these statistics with a grain of salt and just know that they aren't completely demolished for the rest of their life. So for my service learning project, I went to the 48th District Circuit Court in Oakland County and worked with Judge Karen McDonald, who specializes in family law, and I provided a pamphlet to those who she saw that had divorce-related issues, and it kind of was like things to do to help the kids if kids were involved, hotlines that they could use, websites that they could seek, and psychologists or psychiatrists that are very highly recommended within the community. And then along with that, I also spoke to many people who were filing PPO cases, which are personal protection orders, and they're kind of along the lines of a restraining order, and most of them who file are actually divorced families, and I spoke to them and kind of gave them, I listened to what their case was and their scenario, and I, with of course whose job it was to do it, we decided whether or not it should be seen in court and whether it's like a worthy argument for a PPO. So this is my big board, and I hope not everyone is completely destroyed by it, but I will now open up to any questions. Thank you.